The castle had been silent for centuries, until she walked through its gates. Some say the king stopped breathing the moment he saw her. Others swear the shadows themselves recoiled when their eyes met. But everyone agrees on one thing. The night she arrived, the ancient pact written in blood, and starlight began to unravel. And when a vampire king whispers a challenge in the dark, someone always falls. The storm had been raging for 3 days when Elena crossed the iron gates of Thornvale Castle. Rain hammered against the black stone towers, cascading down gargoyles whose mouths yawned open in eternal screams. Lightning split the sky in jagged white veins, illuminating the sprawling fortress that had stood for over 1,000 years, a monument to power, to blood, to something far older than human memory could hold. She shouldn't have been there. No one entered Thornvale uninvited. No one survived the journey through the Blackwood Forest after dusk. And certainly, no human had ever walked those halls without trembling, without begging, without dying. But Elena wasn't like anyone who had come before. She moved through the entrance hall with deliberate steps, her boots echoing against marble floors veined with crimson. Her cloak clung to her shoulders, soaked through, but she didn't shiver. Her dark hair was plastered against her pale face, framing eyes that burned with something dangerous. Not fear, but fury barely contained. The grand hall stretched before her like the throat of some massive beast. Columns rose toward vaulted ceilings lost in shadow. Candles flickered in iron sconces, their flames dancing as if disturbed by invisible breath. Tapestries depicting ancient battles hung from the walls, their threads woven with silver and gold, showing scenes of conquest, of slaughter, of crowned figures standing over fields of the fallen. She had studied these images in books, in forbidden texts her grandmother had kept hidden beneath floorboards. She knew what they meant. She knew what lived here. And she had come anyway. You're either very brave or very foolish. The voice rolled through the darkness like distant thunder, low, smooth, laced with amusement and something far more lethal. It came from everywhere and nowhere, surrounding her, pressing against her skin like cold hands. Elena didn't flinch. She lifted her chin, scanning the shadows. I didn't come here to be judged. A laugh echoed through the hall, rich and mocking. No? Then what did you come for, little human? Sanctuary? Mercy? A pause, heavy with intent. Death? I came for answers. Silence fell, thick and suffocating. The candles flickered violently, and then movement. He emerged from the darkness as if the shadows themselves had birthed him. Tall, impossibly tall, dressed in black that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His hair was dark as midnight, falling to his shoulders in waves that caught the candlelight like oil. His face was carved from marble. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, lips that curved into a smile too beautiful to be anything but dangerous. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath. Crimson, deep, endless crimson, like wine held at a firelight, like blood pooling on snow. They fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel stripped bare, every secret laid open, every lie exposed. This was Lucien Draven, the Crimson King, Lord of the Night, the eldest of the immortal bloodline, the one who had ruled the vampire clan for over 2 millennia. And he was looking at her like she was the most fascinating thing he'd seen in centuries. He moved closer, each step deliberate, predatory. The air around him seemed colder, heavier, charged with ancient power. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs, but she held her ground, refusing to retreat even as every instinct screamed at her to run. Answers, he repeated, circling her slowly, studying her from every angle. And what makes you think I owe you anything? Because you killed my grandmother. The words hung in the air like a blade suspended above both their heads. Lucien stopped moving. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in those crimson eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or calculation. Did I? He murmured, tilting his head. I've killed many grandmothers over the years. You'll have to be more specific. Rage flared hot in Elena's chest, burning away the last traces of caution. Mira Castell. She was a scholar, a keeper of the old texts. 3 months ago, she was found dead in her study, drained completely. No marks except 2 puncture wounds at her throat. Ah! Lucien's smile widened, showing just a hint of fong. The archivist. Yes, I remember her. She had excellent taste in wine, and terrible judgment in what secrets to uncover. Elena's hands clenched into fists at her sides. She discovered something, didn't she? Something about the pact. Something you didn't want revealed. The temperature in the hall dropped 10 degrees. In an instant, the candles guttered, nearly going out. Lucian's smile vanished, replaced by something far more dangerous. Interest. He moved faster than her eyes could track, suddenly standing directly in front of her, close enough that she could feel the unnatural cold radiating from his body, close enough to see that his chest didn't rise and fall with breath, that his skin held no warmth, no pulse of life. "Careful little human," he whispered, his voice like silk dragged over broken glass. "There are things in this world that should remain buried. Knowledge that kills simply by being known. I don't care about the danger." Elena met his gaze without wavering, though her heart felt like it might burst from her chest. "I care about the truth. My grandmother died protecting something, and I intend to find out what." Lucian stared at her for a long moment, those crimson eyes searching her face, reading things she hadn't spoken aloud. Then, slowly, his lips curved into a smile that was equal parts admiration and threat. "You're not afraid of me." It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "I'm terrified of you. And yet you stand here, demanding answers from a creature who could tear out your throat before you drew your next breath." He leaned in closer, his face inches from hers. "Why?" "Because fear without action is just cowardice." Her voice was steady now, anchored by something deeper than survival instinct. "And I won't let her death mean nothing." Something shifted in Lucian's expression, surprise, perhaps, or respect. He straightened, stepping back, and for the first time since he'd appeared, he looked at her not as prey, but as something else entirely. "Very well," he said quietly. "I'll give you your answers. But first," his eyes glinted with dark amusement, "you'll give me something in return." Elena's jaw tightened. "What?" "1 week. Stay here in my castle as my guest. 7 nights to prove you can survive in a world you clearly don't understand. If you last that long without breaking, without begging to leave, I'll tell you everything you want to know about your grandmother's research, about the pact." It was a trap. Every instinct told her it was a trap, but it was also her only chance. "And if I refuse?" Lucian's smile returned, cold and predatory. "Then you'll leave now with nothing and spend the rest of your very short life wondering what secrets died with Miracastel." He paused. "Assuming, of course, that you make it out of Blackwood alive." The choice wasn't really a choice at all. Elena straightened her spine, lifted her chin, and spoke with conviction that surprised even herself. 1 week. I accept. Excellent." Lucian turned away, moving toward the grand staircase that spiraled up into darkness. "Your chambers are in the east wing. Don't wander after midnight. Don't enter any locked rooms. And whatever you do," he glanced back over his shoulder, crimson eyes gleaming, "don't trust anyone who smiles at you. Not even me." Then he was gone, dissolving into shadow as if he'd never been there at all. Elena stood alone in the vast hall, rain still drumming against the windows, thunder rolling overhead. Her hands were shaking now, adrenaline finally catching up with her. She'd done it. She'd faced the Crimson King and lived. But as she made her way toward the east wing, following the corridor lit by guttering candles, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just stepped into a game whose rules she didn't understand. And somewhere in the depths of the castle, she could have sworn she heard laughter, low, knowing, and infinitely patient. The hunt had begun. The east wing of Thornvale Castle existed in perpetual twilight. Even during the day, though Elena had yet to see true sunlight since her arrival, the corridors remained shrouded in half-shadow, as if the walls themselves rejected illumination. Her chambers were surprisingly elegant. A 4-poster bed draped in midnight blue silk, a stone fireplace carved with scenes of celestial battles, windows that looked out over gardens choked with thorns and night-blooming flowers. But elegance couldn't mask the oppressive atmosphere. The air tasted of old stone and older magic. Every creak of wood, every whisper wind through cracks in walls, felt intentional, watchful. She'd been there for 2 days. 2 days of wandering halls that seemed to rearrange themselves when she wasn't looking. 2 days of glimpsing figures that vanished around corners before she could see them clearly. 2 days of Lucian's absence. No sign of the Crimson King, except for the servants who appear without sound to bring her meals she barely touched. The servants never spoke. They moved like ghosts, pale and hollow-eyed, and Elena couldn't tell if they were human, vampire, or something in between. On the third night, unable to sleep, she broke Lucian's first rule. She wandered after midnight. The castle transformed in the deepest hours. Shadows grew longer, darker, almost solid. The temperature dropped until her breath misted in front of her face, and sounds emerged, distant music, like someone playing a violin in rooms far away. Whispers in languages she didn't recognize. Laughter that raised the hair on the back of her neck. Elena followed a spiral staircase downward, deeper into the bowels of the fortress. The walls here were older, rougher, original stone from when the castle was first built. Torch brackets held flames that burned without consuming their fuel, casting dancing light across tapestries, so ancient they were falling to threads. She found herself in a gallery lined with portraits, hundreds of them, stretching down a corridor that seemed to have no end. Faces stared out from ornate frames. Nobles in period dress, warriors with blood-stained armor, women in gowns that cost more than kingdoms. All of them beautiful, all of them dead. No, not dead, immortal. These were vampires, the lords and ladies of the night, captured in oil and canvas across centuries. She moved slowly down the gallery, studying each face, searching for what? Answers? Understanding? Then she saw it, a portrait near the end of the hall, larger than the others, positioned beneath an iron chandelier that held 100 candles. The painting showed a woman in her mid-20s, dressed in white, standing in a garden at night. Her hair was long and dark, her eyes intelligent and fierce. She held a book in one hand and a silver dagger in the other. Elena's blood turned to ice. The woman in the portrait was her grandmother, Mira Castell, younger, decades younger, but unmistakably her. Beautiful, isn't she? Elena spun around, heart slamming against her ribs. Lucian stood 5 feet away, materialized from nothing. He was dressed differently tonight. A deep red shirt open at the collar, revealing the pale column of his throat. His hair was tied back, emphasizing the inhuman perfection of his features. He looked less like a king and more like a fallen angel, beautiful and damned. How? Elena's voice came out rough. Why is my grandmother here? In your gallery? Lucian moved closer, his footsteps silent on the stone floor. He stopped beside her, gazing up at the portrait with an expression she couldn't read. Because she lived here once, a very long time ago. The world tilted beneath Elena's feet. That's impossible. She never told you. Lucian's voice was soft, almost gentle. No, I imagined she wouldn't. Some secrets are too dangerous to share, even with those we love most. Elena stared at the portrait, mind racing. Her grandmother here in this castle, young and alive and holding weapons. What was she to you? A student, a colleague, a friend. Perhaps, though friendship means something different when you've lived as long as I have. He paused, and something like regret flickered across his features. And, for a brief moment, she was something more. The implication hung between them, heavy and impossible. You're lying? Elena breathed. Am I? Lucian turned to face her fully, and in the candlelight his eyes seemed to burn. Your grandmother came to me when she was 23 years old, seeking knowledge about the pact. The same thing you're seeking now. She stayed for 2 years, learning everything I could teach her about the old magic, the blood contracts that bind our kind. And then you killed her. No. The word was sharp, cutting through the space between them. I let her go. I gave her what she wanted. Knowledge, power, the truth about what lurks in the darkness. And she left, returned to the human world, lived her life. His jaw tightened. I didn't kill Mira Castell, but I know who did. Elena's breath caught. Who? Someone who wants the pact destroyed. Someone who believes that breaking the ancient contract will free the vampire clans from the one thing that limits our power. Lucian's eyes darkened. Your grandmother discovered that someone was gathering the blood keys, 7 artifacts that, when combined, can unmake the original covenant. She died trying to hide the final key. Blood keys, Elena repeated. What are they? Relics forged when the pact was made, over 3,000 years ago. Each one contains a fragment of the original magic. The binding that prevents vampires from walking freely in daylight, from turning humans at will, from slaughtering entire cities without consequence. He moved closer, and Elena found herself backing up until she hit the cold stone wall. The pact was created to maintain balance. Without it, my kind would become gods. Unstoppable, unkillable. And you don't want that? Lucian's laugh was bitter. I'm ancient enough to remember what we were before the pact. Monsters without restraint, burning through civilizations like locusts through wheat fields. The pact didn't weaken us. It saved us from ourselves. He placed one hand against the wall, beside her head, leaning in. Your grandmother understood that. She died protecting it. Elena's pulse thundered in her ears. He was so close now, close enough that she could see the inhuman stillness of him, the way his chest never moved with breath. Close enough to see the faint tracery of veins beneath his pale skin, dormant, waiting for blood to bring them to life. Why are you telling me this? She whispered. Because you remind me of her. His voice dropped lower, intimate and dangerous. The same fire, the same stubborn refusal to accept easy answers, the same recklessness that makes you think you can bargain with monsters and survive. I am surviving. Are you? Lucian's free hand came up, his fingers brushing against her throat, not gripping, just touching, feeling the frantic pulse beneath her skin. You break my rules. You wander halls that have devoured better people than you. You stand here, trapped between me and the wall, and you still haven't learned the most important lesson, which is... His eyes locked onto hers, crimson bleeding into something darker, more primal, that you should be afraid of me. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs, but she held his gaze. I told you before, I am afraid, but fear doesn't mean surrender. Something shifted in Lucian's expression. The predatory mask cracked, revealing something raw underneath. Surprise, admiration, and something that looked almost like pain. His fingers stilled against her throat, warm now from contact with her skin. Tell me to stop, he murmured, his voice barely audible. I dare you. The words hung between them, loaded with meaning. She was only beginning to understand. This was a test, she realized, not of courage, but of will. He was offering her an out, a chance to step back from whatever precipice they were approaching. But Elena had never been good at retreating. No, she said simply. Lucian's eyes widened fractionally. For a moment, just a moment, he looked almost human, vulnerable. Then his hand dropped away and he stepped back, putting distance between them with deliberate control. You should return to your chambers, he said, his voice carefully neutral. Dawn is coming, and even I must sleep. Wait. Elena pushed away from the wall, following him. The blood keys. Where are they now? Lucian paused at the entrance to the gallery, silhouetted against the torchlit corridor beyond. 6 are scattered across the world, hidden by those who wish to preserve the pact. The 7th, he glanced back at her. Your grandmother hid it, somewhere even I couldn't find. But whoever killed her is searching, and when they find it, they'll come here to Thornvale, because this castle holds the altar where the pact was forged, the only place where the keys can be used. Then we have to find it first. We. There was dark amusement in his tone. This isn't your fight, Elena. You made my fight when you agreed to give me answers. She moved closer, determination overriding caution. My grandmother died for this. I won't let her sacrifice be meaningless. Lucian studied her in silence, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he nodded. Very well. Tomorrow night, I'll show you the archive, the library where Mira did her research. Perhaps you'll see something I missed. He turned to leave, then paused. And Elena, when I said don't trust anyone who smiles at you, I meant it. There are others in this castle who don't share my commitment to preserving the pact. Watch your back. Then he was gone, melting into shadow and leaving her alone in the gallery of the dead. Elena stood there for a long moment, staring at her grandmother's portrait. In the flickering candlelight, Myra's painted eyes seemed to hold a warning, a plea, or perhaps a blessing. Tomorrow night, she would begin her search in earnest. Tomorrow night, she would dive deeper into a world of ancient magic and blood-soaked secrets. But tonight, standing in the gallery with her heart still racing in her throat, still tingling where Lucian's fingers had rested, Elena couldn't shake one thought. She was falling into something that terrified her far more than any vampire ever could. She was beginning to trust him. And in a castle built on blood and shadows, trust was the most dangerous thing of all. The library existed in a part of the castle Elena hadn't known was there. Lucian led her through a maze of corridors, down staircases that spiraled into depths that shouldn't exist within the castle's foundations. The air grew colder, heavier, thick with the weight of centuries. Torches burned with strange blue flames that cast no warmth, only light that made everything look underwater, dreamlike. Finally, they reached a massive iron door carved with symbols that hurt to look at directly, geometric patterns that seemed to shift and writhe. When viewed peripherally, ancient script and languages that predated recorded history. The Archive of Forgotten Sins, Lucian said quietly, placing one pale hand against the cold metal. Built before the castle, before my reign, before most of human civilization. This place is older than memory. Who built it? Those who came before us. The first ones. His expression was distant, troubled. The architects of the pact. The door swung open without sound, revealing a space that defied physics. The library stretched impossibly far in every direction, a vast cathedral of knowledge lit by thousands of floating orbs that drifted through the air like captive stars. Shelves rose hundreds of feet toward a ceiling lost in darkness, packed with books, scrolls, tablets of clay and stone, crystalline structures that pulsed with inner light. But it wasn't the size that stole Elena's breath. It was the presence. The archive felt alive, aware. As she stepped across the threshold, she felt the weight of countless eyes upon her, as if the knowledge itself was watching, judging, measuring her worth. The archive protects its secrets, Lucian murmured, walking beside her into the vast space. It allows access only to those it deems worthy. Your grandmother spent weeks earning its trust. And if it decides I'm not worthy? He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was grim. Then it will show you things that break your mind, truths that humans aren't meant to comprehend. The archive doesn't kill. It simply reveals too much, too quickly, until sanity shatters like glass. Elena swallowed hard but kept moving forward. The floor beneath her feet was smooth black stone, polished to mirror brightness. She could see her reflection walking below her, and for a disorienting moment, it seemed like she was falling upward and downward simultaneously. "Where do we start?" she asked. Lucian gestured toward a section in the center of the library, where a raised platform held a single desk of dark wood. Papers were scattered across its surface, and Elena's heart clenched when she recognized her grandmother's handwriting. "This is where Mira worked," Lucian said softly. "I preserved everything exactly as she left it. Perhaps you'll understand what she was trying to tell me in those final days." Elena approached the desk slowly, reverently. Her fingers trembled as she touched the papers, recognizing equations, diagrams, passages transcribed in Myra's precise hand. There were drawings of 7 objects: a chalice, a dagger, a crown, a mirror, a chain, a ring, and a heart-shaped stone that seemed to glow even in illustration. The blood keys. She was mapping their locations. Elena breathed, studying the notes. Look, she found 3 of them. The chalice in Prague, the dagger in Cairo, the crown somewhere in the Carpathian Mountains. "I know where 6 of them are," Lucian said, moving to stand beside her. "The 7th, the Heartstone, is the one that matters most. It's the anchor, the keystone that binds all the others. Without it, the pact cannot be broken." Elena rifled through more papers, searching for anything about the Heartstone. Then her fingers found something odd, a letter, sealed with red wax but never sent. The address was simple, to Lucian. She held it up. "Did you know about this?" His eyes widened fractionally. "No, I never saw that." with shaking hands. Elena broke the seal and unfolded the letter. The handwriting was rushed, desperate, so different from Myra's usual careful script. Lucian, if you're reading this, I'm dead. Please forgive what I'm about to do. It's the only way to keep the Heartstone safe. I've discovered who's hunting the keys. Sebastian, your brother, your own blood. He believes the pact makes you weak, that removing it will return the vampire clans to their former glory. He doesn't understand that without the pact, without the balance in forces, your kind will consume everything until there's nothing left to rule. I've hidden the Heartstone in the only place he'll never think to look, in the place closest to you, in the thing you value most. I've embedded it within the anchor of Thornvale itself, woven into the foundation stone in your throne room. But there's a condition, a final protection I've placed upon it. The stone can only be retrieved by someone of my bloodline, and only if they willingly give their blood to awaken it. I'm sorry, Lucian. I know what I'm asking. I know what it means to mix human blood with vampire magic. But Elena, my granddaughter, she's a key now. She carries my legacy, my knowledge in her very DNA. If Sebastian finds her, if he discovers what she is, he'll use her to break the pact. Protect her. And if you can't protect her, then do what must be done. I loved you once. Perhaps I never stopped. That's why I trusted you with this burden. Always, Mira. The letter fell from Elena's numb fingers, drifting to the desk like a fallen leaf. Silence filled the archive, heavy and suffocating. Sebastian, Elena finally whispered, "Your brother killed my grandmother." Lucian stood frozen, his face carved from stone. But his hands were clenching the fist so tight that if he'd been human, his nails would have drawn blood. I exiled him 2 centuries ago for crimes against the pact. I believed he'd learned. That time had tempered his ambition. Where is he now? I don't know. The admission seemed to cost him. He's hidden himself well. But if he knows you're here, if he realizes what you are... Lucian turned to her, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw a genuine fear in those crimson eyes. Elena, you need to leave. Tonight, I'll give you money, protection, a new identity. Run as far and as fast as you can, and never look back. No, this isn't a debate. I said no. Elena's voice was steel. My grandmother died to protect the pact. She trusted me, her bloodline, to finish what she started. I won't run. Then you'll die. Lucian moved closer, gripping her shoulders. His hands were cold, but his touch was gentle. Sebastian won't hesitate. He'll drain you dry to get what he wants, and he'll enjoy every moment of your suffering. Then you'll protect me. Elena met his gaze without flinching. That's what Mira asked you to do. That's the promise you made her. I can't. You can. She reached up, placing her hands over his. You're the Crimson King, the eldest vampire alive. If anyone can stand against your brother, it's you. Lucian stared at her, a dozen emotions warring across his face. Anger, fear, resignation, and something that looked dangerously like hope. Finally, he released her and stepped back, running one hand through his dark hair. You're just as stubborn as she was, he muttered. Is that a yes? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. It's an acknowledgement that arguing with Castell women is an exercise in futility. The smile faded, but you need to understand what you're asking. The throne room, where the Heartstone is hidden, it's warded with the strongest magic in existence. We'll have to perform a blood ritual to access it. Your blood, mixed with mine, offered the foundation stone. What does that mean? What will it do? Lucian hesitated, and in that hesitation, Elena read volumes. It will create a bond between us. Temporary, but powerful. I'll be able to sense you, find you anywhere in the world, feel your emotions, your pain, and you'll feel mine, centuries of memories, of darkness, of things no human was meant to witness. Will it hurt? Yes. No hesitation now. It will hurt more than anything you've ever experienced. The mingling of vampire and human blood is volatile. Some humans don't survive it. Elena's heart hammered, but she forced herself to breathe slowly, to think clearly. And if we don't do this, If we let Sebastian win, then the pack breaks. Vampires walk in daylight, feed without restriction, turn humans by the thousands. Within a decade, your species becomes cattle or corpses. Lucian's eyes burned into hers. Is that enough motivation? She thought her grandmother, young and fierce in that portrait, holding a dagger and a book, thought of all the people who would die if the balance was destroyed, thought of the weight of legacy, of sacrifice, of choices that defined who you were in your core. When do we start? Elena asked quietly. Lucian studied her for a long moment, and something in his expression softened. Respect mingled with sorrow. Tomorrow night, I need time to prepare the ritual, to ensure the wards are in place. Sebastian may already know you're here. We'll have one chance to do this right. Then, tomorrow night it is. They stood in the archive, surrounded by millennia of forbidden knowledge. Two beings from different worlds united by a dead woman's desperate gamble. The floating orbs of light drifted around them like curious spirits, and somewhere in the depths of the vast library, Elena could have sworn she heard whispering. Ancient voices discussing, debating, judging. You should rest, Lucian said finally. What comes next will require all your strength. But as Elena turned to leave, a thought struck her. Lucian, in the letter, my grandmother said she loved you. Did you? He didn't turn around, didn't move, but his voice, when it came, was raw with an emotion she'd never heard from him before. Love is a human word for something that exists beyond mortality. What I felt for Mira was everything, and when she left, when she chose her human life over eternity with me, it was the closest I've come to death in 2,000 years. He paused. I let her go because I loved her enough to give her a choice. And I'll protect you for the same reason, because you carry her legacy and perhaps a final chance at redemption. Elena's throat tightened. She wanted to say something, offer comfort, but what comfort could a human give to a creature who'd loved and lost across centuries? Instead, she simply said thank you, and left him alone in the archive, surrounded by ghosts and memories and the weight of promises that bound the living and the dead. Tomorrow night, everything would change. Tomorrow night, she would bleed for a cause she barely understood, forge a bond with a monster she would begin to see as something more. Tomorrow night, the hunt would truly begin. But tonight, walking back through the twisting corridors of Thornvale Castle, Elena couldn't shake one terrible, exhilarating certainty. She was no longer afraid of Lucian Draven. She was afraid of what she might become because of him. The throne room of Thornvale Castle had been sealed for over a century. Lucian led Elena through corridors she'd never seen before, past doors that opened at his touch and sealed behind them with the finality of tombs closing. The air grew colder, thicker, until each breath felt like inhaling stone dust and ancient magic. The walls here were different, older than the rest of the castle, constructed from blocks of black granite veined with silver that seemed to pulse with dormant power. Elena's footsteps echoed in the silence, each sound swallowed by the oppressive atmosphere. Through the bond they'd forged in the archive, she could feel Lucian's tension, his anticipation mixed with something that felt almost like fear. It unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. What could frighten a creature who'd lived for 2,000 years? The throne room hasn't been opened since before your grandmother was born, Lucian said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Some places hold too much power, too much history. They become dangerous simply by existing. Then why are we going there now? Because it's the only place strong enough to contain what we're about to do. The blood ritual, the awakening of the heart stone. It requires a foundation stone, the anchor point where the pact was originally forged. He paused, glancing back at her. Are you still certain about this, Elena? Once we begin, there's no turning back. She met his crimson gaze without flinching. I'm certain. They continued in silence, descending deeper into the bowels of the fortress. The temperature dropped further, until Elena could see her breath misting in the air. Frost formed on the walls, delicate patterns that looked almost like writing in some forgotten language. The torches here burned with blue flames that cast no warmth, only an eerie underwater light. Finally, they stood before two massive doors of black iron, 50 feet tall, carved with scenes of a great battle. Elena stepped closer, studying the intricate engravings. Armies of angels and demons locked in eternal warfare covered every inch of the metal surface. She could see individual faces twisted in rage or agony, wings spread wide, weapons raised. And in the center, commanding attention despite being smaller than the surrounding figures, was a single form in white. Neither angel nor demon, pouring blood from a chalice onto scorched earth. The first binding, Lucian murmured, tracing the carved figure with one pale finger. His touch was reverent, almost worshipful. 3,000 years ago, the world was burning. Vampires and other night creatures had no limits, no restraints. We fed without mercy, turned humans at will, walked in daylight and darkness equally. Humanity was on the verge of extinction, not from war or disease, but from being harvested like cattle. Elena shivered, both from the cold and from the weight of his words. What changed? Desperation. On both sides. Lucian's hand dropped away from the door. A group of humans, scholars, mystics, priests from every faith, came together with a radical idea. They would bargain with us, offer a covenant that would allow both species to coexist. But they knew we'd never accept limitations voluntarily. So they sought out beings older than vampires, older than humanity itself. The architects, Elena breathed. Yes, no one knows what they truly were. Some texts call them the Watchers. Others name them the First Ones, or the Shapers. They existed before recorded history, before the world took its current form. His voice grew distant, as if recalling something from the very edges of memory. They agreed to help create the pact, but the price was steep. 7 artifacts, the Blood Keys, each one containing a fragment of primordial power, and 1 anchor stone to bind them all together, establishing rules that would govern the night. What rules? Vampires cannot walk in true daylight without burning. We cannot turn humans freely. Each transformation requires permission from the ruling council. We cannot slaughter indiscriminately without facing judgment from our own kind. We feel pain when we feed from the unwilling. Lucian's jaw tightened. The pact didn't make us weak. It made us sustainable. It gave humanity a chance to survive, and it prevented us from destroying ourselves through unchecked excess. Elena studied the door again, seeing new meaning in the carved battle. But not everyone agreed with the pact. No, there have always been those who chafed under the restrictions, who dreamed of returning to the old ways. My brother among them. Pain flickered across Lucian's features. Sebastian and I were turned together. Over 2 millennia ago, we built this castle side by side, ruled the vampire clans jointly. But where I came to see the wisdom in the pact, he only saw chains. When did you exile him? 200 years ago, after he orchestrated a massacre in Prague. 300 humans dead in a single night, all drained completely. He claimed it was a demonstration, proof that we didn't need the pact's restrictions, that we could take what we wanted without consequence. Lucian's hands clenched into fists. I gave him a choice, submit to judgment and accept exile or face execution. He chose exile. I hoped that time would change him, that he'd come to understand. But it didn't. No, it only made him more determined, more patient, more dangerous. Lucian turned to face her fully, and the sorrow in his eyes was almost unbearable. And when he learned that Mira had discovered the location of the final blood key, the Heartstone, he didn't hesitate. He killed her, tortured her for information, and when she refused to reveal the stone's location, he left her to die slowly. Elena's throat tightened with grief and rage. She protected it with her last breath. She protected you, because she knew that her bloodline, your bloodline, was the only thing standing between Sebastian and the destruction of everything the pact has preserved for 3,000 years. The weight of that legacy settled over Elena like a physical thing. She thought her grandmother, young and fierce in that portrait, standing in this very castle decades ago. Thought of all the nights Mira must have spent in the archive, poring over ancient texts, piecing together the puzzle of the blood keys. All the sacrifices she'd made, the secret she'd kept, the love she'd walked away from to protect a world that would never know her name. She gave up everything for this, Elena said softly. She did, and she asked me to protect you if this day ever came. To give you the choice she never had, to walk away or to stand and fight. Lucian reached up, touching her face with unexpected gentleness. I'm asking you now, Elena, one last time. Walk away. Let me face Sebastian alone. You don't have to carry this burden. Through their bond, Elena felt what he wasn't saying. The desperate hope that she'd say yes, that she'd choose safety, that he wouldn't have to watch another woman he cared about sacrifice herself for a cause that demanded everything and promised nothing. But she also felt his resigned certainty that she'd refuse, that she was too much like Mira to choose an easy path. You know my answer, Elena said, covering his cold hand with her warm one. A sad smile touched Lucian's lips. I do. Castell women never could resist a lost cause. He stepped back, squaring his shoulders. Then we proceed. But know this, what we're about to do will change you permanently. The ritual required to awaken the Heartstone and protect it from Sebastian. It will forge a bond between us that goes deeper than anything you can imagine. You'll carry pieces of me inside you, and I'll carry pieces of you. Our souls will be entwined in ways that can never be undone. I understand. Do you? Elena, you'll feel every death I've caused, every moment of darkness I've lived through. 2,000 years of blood and shadow will flood your consciousness. It might break your mind. It might break your spirit. And even if you survive it intact, you'll never be fully human again. You'll age slower, need less food, see in darkness. The line between human and vampire will blur inside you. Elena took a deep breath, steadying herself. My grandmother survived it. Lucian's eyes widened. How did you? The portrait, the way you looked at it, the way you spoke about her. Elena stepped closer. She didn't just study here. She bonded with you, didn't she? That's why she understood the pact so intimately. That's why she could hide the Heartstone in a place only your bloodline could access. She was connected to you. For a long moment, Lucian said nothing. Then he nodded slowly. Yes, Mira and we performed a lesser version of the ritual. It was supposed to be temporary, just long enough for her to access certain protected archives. But the bond strengthened over time. By the time she left, we were... He trailed off, unable or unwilling to finish. Bound, connected, in love. Love is too simple a word for what we became. We were two halves of a paradox, life and death, warmth and cold, mortal and immortal. Every moment together was ecstasy and agony in equal measure. And when she left, his voice cracked just slightly. When she chose to return to the human world, to live and age and eventually die rather than stay with me, it was like having my heart carved out while I watched. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. Through the bond, she could sense the echo of that ancient pain, a wound that had never fully healed, a grief he'd carried for decades. Why did she leave? Because she understood something I refused to accept, that a life bound to darkness, no matter how privileged, no matter how powerful, was still a half-life. She wanted sunlight, children, the chance to grow old with someone who could grow old beside her. Lucian turned back to the iron doors. She wanted to be human, and I could never give her that. So she left, and I let her go, because loving someone means wanting their happiness more than your own comfort. The raw honesty in his words struck Elena like a physical blow. This wasn't the Crimson King, the Lord of the Night, the monster from legends. This was just a man, or what remained of one, who'd loved and lost and carried the scars forever. She never stopped loving you, Elena said quietly. Even after she left, even after she married, had my mother, built a whole life, she kept your letters, kept drawings of the castle, kept every artifact she collected during her time here. She never forgot. Lucian's shoulders tensed. I shouldn't have told you all this. It makes what comes next harder. Or maybe it makes it easier. Maybe knowing what my grandmother felt, what she sacrificed, makes me more certain that I'm making the right choice. Elena moved to stand beside him, facing the massive doors. Open them. Let's finish this. He studied her face for a long moment, searching for doubt or fear. When he found neither, something like pride flickered in his crimson eyes. You're remarkable, Elena Castell. Your grandmother would be proud. He placed both hands against the door, and power surged through the corridor. Ancient magic responded to ancient blood. The iron doors shuddered, and then slowly, ponderously, they began to swing open with sound like thunder rolling across mountains. The throne room lay beyond. It was vast and circular, easily 300 feet in diameter, with a domed ceiling that showed the night sky despite being deep underground. But this wasn't the sky Elena knew. Stars wheeled in impossible configurations, constellations that belonged to no earthly heaven. Nebulae swirled in colors that hurt to look at directly, and at the center of the dome, where the zenith should be, burned a sun that was black as midnight, ringed with white fire. "The eternal night," Lucian whispered, following her gaze. The sky as it appeared when the pact was forged, frozen in time, preserved here as a reminder of what we agreed to surrender. The walls were lined with 12 alcoves, each holding a statue carved from some dark stone that seemed to absorb light. The figures were cloaked and hooded, their faces hidden in shadow, their hands raised in gestures that might have been blessing or warning. Something about them made Elena's skin crawl. They were too still, too perfect, as if waiting for a signal to move. "The witnesses," Lucian explained, "guardians placed here by the architects to ensure the pact is never broken. If anyone attempts to destroy the Heartstone or use the blood keys improperly, they awaken, and they show no mercy to those who break sacred covenants." In the center of the room stood a throne carved from a single piece of obsidian, black as the void between stars. It was massive, sized for giants rather than men, and its surface was covered in the same strange script Elena had seen frost-written on the walls. Power radiated from it like heat from a forge, and before the throne, set into the floor, was a circular platform of white stone that seemed to glow with inner light, pure and clean in contrast to the surrounding darkness. "The foundation stone," Elena breathed. "The anchor." Yes, forged from the bones of the earth itself, blessed by powers older than gods. Everything, the pact, the blood keys, the throne room, the castle itself, is built around this stone. It's the linchpin of reality in this place. Elena took a step forward, drawn by the stone's luminescence. She could feel it calling to her, recognizing something in her blood, her heritage. Myra's legacy lived in her veins, and the ancient magic knew it. But it was what lay beyond the throne that made Elena's blood run cold. A man stood in the shadows at the far end of the chamber, tall and elegant, with hair like silver moonlight cascading down his back. He wore black velvet that seemed to drink in the light, and when he turned to face them, his eyes burned with crimson fire brighter and more intense than Lucian's. He was beautiful in the way that poisonous things are beautiful. Perfect features that promised pleasure and delivered only death. Where Lucian's presence felt like controlled power, like a blade sheathed but ready, this man radiated barely contained violence. Chaos waiting to be unleashed. "Brother," the man said, his voice smooth as poison honey. Each word dripped with mockery and malice. "How wonderfully predictable you are. When I felt the wards respond to human blood, Castell blood, I knew you'd bring her here, right to me. Save me the trouble of hunting through your labyrinthine corridors." Sebastian, even through the bond, Elena felt Lucian's shock, his fury, his fear. His brother hadn't just found the throne room. He'd been waiting here, prepared, anticipating their every move. "How did you breach the wards?" Lucian's voice was deadly calm, but Elena could sense the rage building beneath his control. Sebastian laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Did you really think your magic could keep me out forever? I helped build this castle, brother. I performed half the rituals that created its defenses. Its stones remember my blood as well as yours. Better, perhaps, since I've never forgotten what we are. Predators, not shepherds. Monsters, not guardians." He moved forward into the light, and Elena saw that he wasn't alone. Shadows detached themselves from the alcoves, not the statues, but other figures. Vampires. At least a dozen of them, all ancient by the feel of their power, all loyal to Sebastian. "You brought an army," Lucian said flatly. "A court. These are the others who've grown tired of your restrictive little pact, who remember the old nights when we were gods and humans were cattle." Sebastian's smile widened, showing fangs longer and sharper than any Elena had seen. Did you think you were the only one who could gather followers? That loyalty to your outdated covenant was universal? You ruled through fear and tradition for too long, brother. The younger generations have never known true freedom. They're hungry for it. Lucian moved instantly, positioning himself between Elena and his brother. Through their bond, Elena felt him calculating odds, planning escape routes, preparing for battle. But she also felt his despair. They were outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and trapped in a room with only one exit. Leave now, Sebastian, and I'll let you walk away. All of you. Lucian's voice echoed with power, with the weight of 2 millennia of authority. This is your last chance. Abandon this madness before it's too late. Sebastian's laugh bounced off the dome overhead, distorted by the impossible sky. Let me? Oh, Lucian, still playing the noble king. Even as your kingdom crumbles around you, do you know how long I've waited for this moment? 2 centuries of exile, of watching you cling to your precious pact while our kind grows weaker with every passing year. Bound by rules, limited by conscience, reduced to skulking in shadows and begging permission to exist. The pact doesn't make us weak. It makes us sustainable. Without it, we'll destroy everything, including ourselves. We've been through this before. Sebastian, you know what we were before the binding. I know what we were: powerful, free, glorious. Sebastian's eyes blazed with fanatic intensity. And I know what we became: domesticated, neutered, bound by chains forged from human fear and our own misplaced guilt. But that ends tonight. His gaze shifted to Elena, and the hunger in his eyes made her skin crawl. It wasn't just bloodlust. It was something darker, more possessive. And this little human holds a key to our ascension. Myra's granddaughter. How beautifully poetic. The woman who helped strengthen the pact produced a bloodline that will destroy it. Lucian's hands clenched at his sides, and Elena felt his fury spike through their bond. You killed her. Mira was under my protection, and you murdered her. For the first time, something like genuine emotion crossed Sebastian's face. Not regret, but something close to disappointment. I gave her a choice, actually. A very fair one, considering. Join me. Help me find the Heartstone. Use her knowledge to unmake the pact peacefully. Or die. She chose poorly. His voice dropped, becoming almost gentle. Just as you're about to choose poorly, brother. Give me the girl. Let me have her blood. Let me activate the stone, and I'll spare you. We can rule together again, as we once did, before you became so sentimental, before you let human morality poison your thinking. Never. Then you'll watch her die slowly, and you'll live with that failure for eternity. Sebastian's smile vanished, replaced by cold determination. I tried to do this the easy way, Lucian, for old time's sake, but you always did have a martyr complex. He gestured to his followers. Take him, but keep the girl alive. I need her blood fresh. The vampires moved as one, a coordinated assault from multiple angles. But Lucian was already moving, faster than Elena's eyes could track. He met Sebastian mid-leap, and the 2 vampires collided with sound like crashing thunder that shook the throne room. The force of their impact sent shockwaves rippling across the floor, cracking marble, disturbing dust that hadn't moved in centuries. They became a whirlwind of violence, claws and fangs, superhuman strength that cracked stone and bent iron. They moved so fast they were barely visible, just blurs of black and silver, accompanied by sounds of tearing flesh and breaking bone. The other vampires tried to join the fight, but Lucian was everywhere at once, striking, dodging, countering with precision born from millennia of combat. He moved like death personified, beautiful and terrible, every motion economical and devastating. But he was outnumbered. For every vampire he struck down, 2 more took their place. Elena stumbled backward, her mind screaming at her to run, but her body frozen in horror and awe. This was power beyond comprehension, ancient and terrible. The statues in their alcoves seemed to watch the battle, their hidden faces turned toward the violence, judging, waiting for some threshold to be crossed. Lucian threw Sebastian across the room. The silver-haired vampire hit the wall hard enough to crater the stone, but he was already moving again, laughing, eyes blazing with manic joy. I've gotten stronger, brother. 2 centuries of feeding without restraint, without your pathetic moral code holding me back. Do you feel it? Can you feel how much faster I am? How much more powerful? Sebastian landed in a crouch, blood dripping from his mouth, not his own, but from some victim he'd drained recently. This is what we're meant to be. This is our true nature. They clashed again, and this time Lucian staggered. Blood, black as ink in the starlight, dripped from a gash across his chest. His shirt hung in tatters, revealing pale skin marked with dozens of wounds. He was losing. Through their bond, Elena felt his pain, his exhaustion, his growing desperation. He was strong, perhaps the strongest of his kind, but he'd never been ruthless enough, never been willing to feed without mercy, to kill without hesitation. His conscience, the very thing that made him worthy of ruling, was now his greatest weakness. Sebastian and his followers had no such limitations. Elena's paralysis broke. She couldn't let this happen. Couldn't let Sebastian win. Couldn't let the pact break. Couldn't let Lucian die protecting her. She ran toward the foundation stone. "Elena, no!" Lucian's shout echoed through the throne room, raw with panic, but she ignored it. She dropped to her knees on the white stone platform, pulling the silver knife she'd hidden in her boot, one of her grandmother's tools, blessed with holy water and ancient prayers. The handle was worn smooth from years of use, and Elena could almost feel Myra's presence in the metal, guiding her hand. Without hesitation, without letting herself think about pain or consequence, she drew the blade across her palm. Blood welled up immediately, crimson and bright, dripping onto the white stone. Each drop that fell seemed to sizzle where it touched, as if the foundation stone was hungry for it, recognizing the heritage it carried. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The foundation stone blazed with light, pure white radiance that flooded the throne room, banishing every shadow. The 12 statues came alive, their stone eyes opening to reveal burning emerald light, their mouths moving in silent chants that Elena felt in her bones rather than heard with her ears. The dome overhead swirled, stars spiraling faster and faster until they became streaks of light. The black sun at the zenith pulsed, and a sound filled the air, deep, resonant, like the heartbeat of the world itself. Or perhaps it was a heartbeat of the pact, awakening after centuries of dormancy. Sebastian froze mid-strike, his eyes wide with shock and fury. "No, you foolish girl, you don't know what you're doing." But Elena did know. Her grandmother's letter had been crystal clear. Blood of her bloodline, freely given, awakens a stone, opens a path to the Heartstone, begins the final protection. And something else awakened with it. Pain exploded through Elena's body as the blood ritual activated in full force. She felt the stone pulling at her, drawing not just blood but life force, memories, the essence of who she was. It was like being turned inside out, every nerve ending exposed and screaming. She gasped, then screamed, unable to stop herself as centuries of accumulated magic poured into her mortal frame. Power that was never meant for human vessels flooded through her veins like liquid fire, rewriting her from the inside out. Through the agony, she felt fragments of Myra's own experience. Her grandmother had done this too, had offered her blood and suffered the same transformation. But Mira had been prepared, had understood what was coming. Elena was diving in blind, sustained only by desperation and determination. Then Lucian was there, appearing beside her in a blur of motion. Blood still dripped from his wounds, but his eyes were clear, focused entirely on her. He dropped to his knees on the white stone platform, his hand closing over her bleeding palm with infinite gentleness. "Together," he said urgently, his voice cutting through her screams. "Elena, listen to me. You can't do this alone. The power will burn you out from the inside. We do this together. Let me help you carry it." She managed to nod, tears streaming down her face from pain and fear, and something that felt absurdly like gratitude. Lucian brought his other hand to his mouth and bit into his own wrist with savage efficiency. Black blood flowed, thick and ancient, carrying the weight of 2,000 years of existence. He pressed his bleeding wrist against her palm, and their blood mingled on the white stone. The world exploded into light. Elena felt the bond snap into place. Not the tender connection they'd forged in the archive, but something absolute, overwhelming, permanent. Lucian's mind crashed into hers with the force of an avalanche, and she was drowning in him, in 2,000 years of existence flooding her consciousness all at once. She saw a young man in ancient Rome, barely 20 years old, dying from a sword wound in some forgotten alley. Saw the figure that appeared above him, beautiful and terrible, offering a choice between death and darkness. Saw him wake 3 days later in a tomb, clawing through stone with newfound strength, emerging into a world that would never look the same. Saw centuries blur past, the fall of Rome, the rise of new kingdoms, wars and plagues, and the slow march of human civilization. Saw him feed, saw him kill, saw him revel in power, and then slowly, gradually, begin to question what he was doing. Saw the night he met the architects, the beings who created the pact. Saw himself and Sebastian standing side by side in this very throne room as the first binding was performed. Felt the chains of limitation settling onto his shoulders like physical weight. Saw the relief that came with those chains. The terrible, shameful relief of no longer having to be a monster without restraint. Saw Mira Castell walk into his castle 50 years ago, young and fierce and utterly unafraid. Saw himself fall for her slowly, reluctantly, fighting at every step because he knew it was impossible. Saw her leave, saw her choose mortality over eternity with him, and felt the wound that moment left in his soul, a wound that had never healed. And through the bond, she felt him experiencing her life, 24 years compressed into seconds. Her childhood, her mother's death when she was 10, being raised by Mira, the night her grandmother taught her about the blood keys, making her swear to protect the secret. Finding Myra's body 3 months ago, drained and broken, but with one hand clutching a letter that would lead Elena to Thornvale. Every joy, every sorrow, every moment of her short human life laid bare before eyes that had seen empires crumble. They were one being, 2 souls merged in a moment of perfect, terrible understanding. Past and present, mortal and immortal, human warmth and vampire cold, all of it swirling together in the crucible of the foundation stone. And in that moment of absolute unity, the heart stone revealed itself. It rose from the foundation stone like a seed breaking through soil, a crystalline heart the size of a fist, pulsing with inner light that shifted through every color imaginable, red like fresh blood, blue like midnight, gold like dawn, silver like starlight, beautiful, terrible, powerful beyond measure. This was the anchor, the final blood key, the thing that held the entire pack together. Elena could feel its significance, its weight in the cosmic balance. Sebastian saw it too. He moved with desperate speed, materializing beside Elena in a blur of shadow and silver hair. His hand shot out, shoving Lucian away with inhuman strength, reaching for the heartstone with fingers that trembled with anticipation. Finally, after all these years of searching, of planning, of waiting, his hand closed around the crystal heart. The pact ends tonight and a new age begins. An age where vampires rule without restriction, where humans exist only to serve us, where we reclaim our place as the apex predators of... His words cut off in a scream. The heartstone burned him. Holy light erupted from the crystal, wrapping around Sebastian's hand like chains of pure fire. The glow was blinding, searing, righteously furious. He tried to drop the stone, but it clung to his palm like a living thing, searing through flesh, through bone, revealing the darkness inside him and rejecting it utterly. No, this isn't possible. I'm worthy. I deserve this. Sebastian fell to his knees, his entire body convulsing. I am the future. I am evolution. The pact is a chain, and I am the key. You deserve nothing, Lucian said quietly. He was back on his feet, moving toward his brother with slow, deliberate steps. Blood still dripped from his wounds, but his eyes blazed with ancient authority. Not just a vampire's power, but something older. The weight of a promise kept for 3,000 years. The Heartstone judges all who touch it. It reads the truth in souls, sees past lies and justifications, and it's found you wanting. The light intensified, and Sebastian's screams became inhuman. Smoke rose from his skin, acrid and sickening. His followers, the vampires who'd supported his coup, tried to approach, to help, but the holy light drove them back, burning anyone who came too close. Elena watched through tears, both from her own lingering pain and from the horror of what she was witnessing. Through the bond, she felt Lucian's internal struggle, rage battling compassion, justice warring with mercy. Sebastian had killed Mira, had threatened everything, had brought an army to destroy the Pact and enslave humanity. He deserved this agony, but he was still family. Still the brother Lucian had grown up with centuries before the darkness claimed them both. Still the person he'd built this castle with, ruled beside, loved despite everything. Brother, Sebastian gasped, his voice reduced to a rasp. His hand was a ruin, flesh charred black, bones visible through melted skin, blood dripping black and smoking where it hit the white stone. Please, help me. I'm sorry. I didn't mean... Please... Lucian stopped, standing over his fallen brother. For a moment, just a moment, Elena saw the mask crack completely. Saw not the Crimson King, but simply a man watching his family suffer, tore between what was right and what his heart screamed at him to do. Let go of the stone, Lucian said quietly, and his voice was thick with emotion. Release it, Sebastian. Let it go and the burning stops. It's not too late. You can still walk away from this. But the Pact, I can break it. I can free us. The Pact doesn't imprison us. It protects us. From ourselves most of all. Lucian knelt beside his brother. I know you don't believe that. I know you think I'm weak, that I betrayed our nature. But strength isn't about taking everything you want. It's about choosing restraint when you could choose destruction. That's what separates us from mindless beasts. Let go. Finally, with a cry of anguish that echoed through the throne room and seemed to shake the very foundations of reality, Sebastian released a heart stone. It fell to the white platform, still glowing, still judging. His hand was destroyed, flesh charred black, bones exposed, blood pooling beneath him. He collapsed fully, gasping, trembling with shock and pain. Lucian stood slowly, looking down at his brother with an expression Elena couldn't quite name. Sorrow, perhaps, or resignation, or the terrible weight of responsibility that came with power. I exile you, Lucian said, and his voice carried the weight of absolute authority, echoing with power that made the statues vibrate in their alcoves. Not for 2 centuries this time. Forever. Leave this place. Leave this continent. If you ever return, if you ever threaten the Pact or anyone under my protection again, I will end you. I will hunt you down, and I will grant you the true death, the final darkness. Brother or not. Do you understand? Sebastian looked up at him, and in that moment, all the madness, all the ambition, all the grand plans, they crumbled. What remained was just pain, defeat, and hatred so pure it was almost beautiful in its intensity. This isn't over, he whispered. Yes, Lucian said softly. It is... With a burst of speed born from desperation, Sebastian fled, dissolving into shadow and escaping through cracks in the stone. His followers scattered as well, abandoning their cause, fleeing into the darkness. In seconds, they were gone, leaving only the smell of burned flesh and the echo of defeated threats. Silence fell over the throne room. Elena knelt on the foundation stone. Still bleeding, still connected to Lucian through the bond that now seemed as natural as breathing. She could feel his exhaustion, his relief, his sorrow. The battle was won, but it didn't feel like victory. She reached out, picked up the heart stone. It was warm in her hand, welcoming, as if recognizing her as kin, as worthy, as someone who would protect rather than destroy. The light had faded to a gentle pulse, beautiful rather than blinding. It's safe now, she whispered. The Pact is safe. Lucian knelt beside her, gently taking the stone and placing it back into its resting place in the foundation. The white stone accepted it like a mother cradling a child, and slowly, gradually, the light faded. The statues returned to stillness, their eyes closing, their mouths ceasing their silent chants. The dome overhead calmed, stars resuming their eternal patterns. But the bond remained. Stronger now, permanent, unbreakable. Elena looked at Lucian, and through their connection, She understood him in ways that went beyond words, beyond reason. Understood his loneliness, his burden, the weight of being a king to a race of monsters. Understood why Mira had loved him, and why she left. Understood that love and duty were not always compatible. That sacrifice came in many forms. This bond, Elena said softly, watching as her palm sealed itself, not with a scar, but with a faint silver mark that looked almost like a rune. How long does it last? Normally, a few days, maybe a week, depending on the strength of the ritual. Lucian's eyes met hers, and there was something vulnerable in his gaze, something almost afraid. But this wasn't a normal ritual. We mixed blood on the foundation stone, with the heart stone active, in the throne room where the pact was forged. The magic that binds us now, Elena, it's permanent as the pact itself. Her breath caught. Permanent? You mean we'll always be connected? Always. He reached up, touching her face with infinite gentleness. His fingers were cold, but the touch felt right, familiar. I can sense you anywhere in the world. Feel your emotions, your pain, your joy, and you'll carry pieces of me, my memories, my strength, my darkness. You're no longer fully human. Elena, your blood has changed. You'll age slower, heal faster, see in darkness, feel the pull of night. You'll never quite fit in the mortal world again. He paused, and his voice dropped to barely a whisper. And I'm no longer entirely alone. Elena should have been terrified, should have raged against this violation of her humanity, this transformation she hadn't fully consented to, should have mourned the loss of her mortality, her normal life, her chance at an ordinary future. But through the bond, she felt what this meant to him. After 2 millennia of isolation, of being a king without equals, of loving and losing across centuries, of carrying burdens no one else could understand, he had connection again. True connection, deep and unbreakable. Someone who could see him fully, monster and man, darkness and light, and choose to stay anyway. And she felt something else, something she'd been denying since the moment she'd faced him in the entrance hall, since he'd touched her throat in the portrait gallery, since he'd shown her vulnerability in the archive. She was falling for him, not despite what he was, but because of everything he'd chosen to be, a monster who'd fought against his own nature, who'd preserved the balance even when it cost him everything, who'd protected humanity even though humans would never thank him, would never know his name or understand his sacrifice. I'm not leaving, she said quietly but firmly. The week you gave me, I'm not leaving when it ends. I'm not leaving at all. Elena, my grandmother loved you. She trusted you. And through this bond, through everything I've seen in your memories, I understand why. You're not the monster the world thinks you are. You're not even the monster you think you are. She took his hand, his cold fingers intertwining with her warm ones, the physical connection echoing the deeper bond between them. Let me stay. Let me help you protect the pact. Let me finish what she started. Let me be what she couldn't. Someone who chooses this life knowing exactly what it costs. Lucian stared at her, emotions flickering across his face too quickly to name. Shock, hope, fear, longing, and something that looked almost like wonder, as if he'd forgotten that happiness was possible, that connection could exist without eventual loss. Then, slowly, carefully, he pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers in a gesture that was intimate without being romantic, vulnerable without being weak. This will change you in ways you can't imagine yet, he whispered, his voice raw. Staying here, being bound to me, you'll age slower, live longer, but you'll also see things humans aren't meant to see. You'll witness horrors. You'll navigate a world of supernatural politics and blood-soaked history. You'll make enemies who'll try to kill you simply because you're connected to me. And you'll never be able to return to the innocent ignorance most humans enjoy. Through the bond, Elena showed him her answer, not in words, but in feeling. Certainty, determination, acceptance, and something that felt dangerously like hope, like joy, like the beginning of something new. I'm certain. They stayed like that for a long moment. Two beings from different worlds holding on to each other in a throne room built on ancient magic and older promises. The foundation stone pulsed beneath them, warm and approving. The statues watched with eyes that saw everything. Outside, Elena knew dawn was breaking. Lucian would need to retreat to his chambers, to sleep the daylight hours away in the darkness that sustained him. But she would remain, would begin learning everything she needed to know about protecting the Pact, about navigating a world of supernatural intrigue, would study the archives, master the magic her grandmother had only begun to understand, would become something new, not quite human, not quite vampire, but something in between, a bridge, a guardian, the granddaughter of Mira Castell, continuing her legacy in ways Mira never could. And as Lucian rose, offering her his hand to help her stand, Elena felt the future unfolding before them through their bond. Challenges ahead. Sebastian would return eventually, and there would be others who opposed the pact. Enemies gathering in shadows, plotting revenge. Centuries of darkness and light intertwined. But they would face it together. The girl who didn't kneel, and the king who learned to bow. Two souls bound by blood and choice, writing a new chapter in an ancient story that was still being written. And in the throne room of Thornvale Castle, where the pact had been forged 3,000 years ago, the foundation stone pulsed with approval, recognizing that sometimes the strongest magic of all was not power or immortality or vengeance. Sometimes it was simply choosing to stand together against the dark, even when the darkness lived inside you, especially then,